From Rockefeller Center, this is the Democratic primary debate for New York City Public Advocate with State Assembly Member Jenifer Rajkumar and Public Advocate Jumaane Williams. Sponsored by News for New York, Telemundo 47, Politico, the New York City Campaign Finance Board, and NYC Votes. Here now, News for New York anchor David Ushery.
Hello from 30 Rock, and welcome to the second Democratic primary debate for New York City Public Advocate. I'm joined by my colleagues, News 4 Government Affairs reporter Melissa Russo and senior New York editor for Politico, Sally Goldenberg. This is a one-hour debate. The candidates' positions on stage were chosen by random drawing. A few rules for both of you. The traditional question and answer, you'll have 1 minute to respond. And we'll offer 30-second rebuttals at the moderator's discretion. We'll also be asking questions where we will be looking for shorter responses. And we do reserve the right to cut off your microphone if you ignore the rules. But of course, our goal is for you to hear each other and for New Yorkers to hear everything that you have to say. First, let's explain what the Public Advocate does. The position was created in 1993 to be the city's official watchdog and hold agencies accountable, to be a voice for New Yorkers. While the Public Advocate doesn't have direct authority over agencies, the office can affect change by filing lawsuits and introducing legislation to the City Council. And critically, the Public Advocate is first in line of succession to the mayor if the mayor is unable to perform their duties. So with that, candidates, good luck. We'll begin with Melissa Russo.
Thank you, David. Hello, everybody. We would like to begin with something a little bit different to see what the role of Public Advocate means to each of you. We've heard your campaign pitches already, but we want to test your advocacy skills on behalf of New Yorkers with just a few scenarios. So you'll have 30 seconds to answer, and you should think of it as sort of an elevator pitch, selling the power of your office. We'll begin with you, Ms. Rajkumar. A family of 4 in the Bronx is behind on their rent and they're facing eviction. There are not enough free lawyers to represent them in housing court. So you're the Public Advocate. They call your office for help. Please look into the camera and tell them what you would do as Public Advocate to help them. You'll have 30 seconds.
So as your Public Advocate, I am your lawyer. I am the people's lawyer. And I am going to make sure that we have all of the legal representation that you need to succeed in housing court. Justice delayed is justice denied. And I'm going to make sure that you get a quick resolution to what you need. Housing in this city is not affordable. And I am here to remedy those bureaucratic failures. I am a civil rights lawyer, Stanford Law trained, and I have everything that it takes to make sure that you get the legal representation that you need. Thank you, Ms. Rajkumar.
Mr. Williams, a different scenario for you. The mother of a young man who's being held on Rikers Island says her son is wasting away. His trial date continues to be pushed back. He's distraught over the harsh conditions, and also his mental health is deteriorating. The mom calls your office for help. Please look into the camera here and tell that mom, what would you do to help her son? You have 30 seconds.
Well, first, peace and blessing, love and light to you all, and thank you for having us. This is not a made-up scenario. We get calls like this, over 10,000 calls in the past 6 years. We have a dedicated staff, constituent service staff, and people who have expertise in this. It seems to be a lot of layers. And so we do want to make sure that the person actually has an attorney. So we speak to you to make sure you have an attorney. And we reach out to Rikers Island. We reach out to the administration to see what's being done with this person as much as legally possible. We also want to make sure that this individual has mental health assistance. And so those things may take time. We'll do the best that we can. We'll also see if there's any legislation that we can change to make sure that your son is treated better.
Thank you. Sally?
Thank you, Melissa. Ms. Rajkumar, this question is for you. This scenario involves an undocumented couple from Mexico living in Queens and fearing deportation. The fear is so intense, they're keeping their daughter out of school, and she never goes to the doctor. They hear the Public Advocate helps everyone, so they call you, asking for reassurances that they'll be safe in New York City. What do you tell them? You have 30 seconds.
Thank you for bringing this to me. I used to direct immigration affairs for the entire state of New York, pushing back against the first Trump administration when they tried to come after undocumented immigrants. You have my full support. Anything that you say is between us, and I will make sure that you get justice, because anyone who is on American soil deserves to be treated with a certain level of dignity and respect, because that's who we are as Americans.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, the owner of a pharmacy in Brooklyn says her biggest problem isn't competition from big box chain stores, it's shoplifters. Even if the police get them, they come back, they do it again. This pharmacy owner has called the police precinct, the community board, the local city council member, to no avail. So she calls you. What do you say to her as public advocate? You have 30 seconds.
Thanks for calling. These are all real life scenarios that I've dealt with as a small business owner. Or former small business owner, I definitely understand the frustration. We also want to make sure that this is general, that recidivism is not new. It's something that we haven't addressed. But directly to this business owner, let them know that we actually are doing what we can to try to address the recidivism that's going on. And we want to see, is there a ring of people that we can prosecute for doing this? Or is this somebody in the neighborhood that needs some assistance, that if we would provide that assistance to them, it will cut down on the type of shoplifting that's going on? So you really want to get an idea of what's going on in that particular person's life.
Thank you.
So we can be the best to help.
Thank you,
Mr. Williams.
Moving on to your advocacy on behalf of people who are worried about affordability in this city. Every poll shows that it's the top concern of New York City voters right now. The cost of everything seems to be going through the roof, but housing is the biggest issue. So just one quick question before we dive into that issue, and we asked the same question last week in the mayoral debate. A short answer here. How much do each of you pay each month for rent or mortgage? Mr. Williams?
Just over $4,000 in rent.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rajkumar?
$1,700.
Thank you. Did you say 1,700?
Yes.
Okay,
That's
thank
awesome.
you. New York City has some of the strongest rent protections, tenant protections in the nation, but the housing market remains tight and homes still are largely unaffordable in this city. So my question now is, who is to blame for this? And how would you use the Public Advocate's Office to make housing more affordable? You'll have 1 minute each to answer. Ms. Rajkumar, we start with you.
We need to build our way out of the housing crisis. If we build more housing, rents will go down. So how do we build more housing? We need to speed up the pace of building. It takes 10 years to build new housing. That is completely unacceptable. As an assembly member, I've already passed laws to speed up building in the city, to make it more efficient and cost effective. And as public advocate, I'll have an even bigger bully pulpit to get the job done.
Okay, Mr. Williams?
This is 1 minute?
Yes.
As you mentioned, and the people who are watching, affordability is your biggest issue. Housing and where you can find housing for your family is real. This is issues I've been working on for over 20 years. I started out as a community organizer around housing. No real housing plan exists without preservation. So 60% of any plan has to include preservation. So we have to preserve rent regulation. We have to preserve Section 8. We have to preserve Mitchell-Lama. We have to preserve NYCHA. And then we go to building, which we actually do have to build. But we do want to make sure if we're building, it's actually for people who can afford it, the people who are watching right now. Very often we are asking people to accept building new housing, but then they can't afford to stay there. So we want to make sure if we are building, you can afford it. We also want to make sure that people remain in their homes. And so we want to make sure they're able to access any legal services that they need, any services from our office that we can provide. We also want to make sure we don't forget about foreclosure prevention, making sure that people who are facing foreclosure can remain in their home, and that every housing plan also includes an access to home ownership.
Mr. Williams, in just a word or two, what is to blame, most to blame for the lack of affordability in housing?
Well, that's simple.
Just a word or two.
It's greed. Housing is based on how much money people can make.
You're referring to landlords?
The whole industry is based on how much someone can make, not a service.
And Ms. Rajkumar, just to pin you down, because I didn't hear you give a main reason, were you saying that the primary reason is the amount of time it takes to build housing?
The primary reason is government inefficiency. Government inefficiency costs lives.
Thank you. Okay, we're switching now to the question about landlords. Two quick questions here. We're looking for short answers. First, would you support a vacancy tax on landlords with empty apartments? Mr. Williams, we'll begin with you.
Well, one, we're very proud of the worst landlord list that we put out every single year, and it's being used now as a great organizing tool. Two, I've always supported a vacancy tax. There are way too many homes being warehoused. But I just want to mention we've run into constitutional issues around this. So I want to make sure we get it in a way that doesn't violate the Constitution.
Maybe we'll come back to that. But Ms. Rajkumar, would you support a vacancy tax on landlords with empty apartments?
Yes, I would support that. But I also need to point out that the current public advocate has evicted tenants. He poses as a housing champion, but he hasn't paid his mortgage in 10 years and has a record of eviction. So he is the public evictor, not the public advocate.
Mr. Williams, would you like to respond?
Yeah, it's a lot. And as a licensed attorney, it always worries me that there's just so many misinformation of facts that you would put out there. It's really shameful. Just having evicted any tenants, it's just simply not true.
That's the record.
It's
been reported
it is absolutely,
in the news.
I would love to be able to finish. Thank you. It's just absolutely not true. And as a licensed attorney, I really wish you would push facts and not misinformation.
These are facts.
They absolutely are not facts. And so
okay.
I haven't interrupted at all. And so I would really love to just...
All right, just a few seconds here, and then we have other questions.
So I have not evicted any tenants. I mean, to the point of the mortgage that's been played out for about 10 years, and I'd rather talk about what this office can do and not about misinformation.
What have you done?
From Twitter or from New York Post or from Eric Adams.
What have you done?
I'm trying.
Ms. Rajkumar.
I'm not sure what's happening right now.
Let's try to stay on track, okay?
Sure.
Thank you. In your last debate, you both said that you support a rent freeze, but if the landlord costs have gone up considerably, would you still support freezing the rent in a given year in the future? Ms. Rajkumar.
I think that right now we need a rent freeze. We are in the midst of a housing crisis. We have to give relief to tenants. We also have to watch for our small landlords and make sure that they have the
So if
breaks
their
that
costs
they need.
are going up, the question was, would you still support the rent freeze?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Williams?
I think what's important is to make sure you look at this responsibly. The short answer is yes. And there are owners who actually need assistance. What we need to do is ask the government to provide that assistance for our housing stock, because what we've seen is that tenants can't provide that. It just increases homelessness.
Thank you.
That is a responsible way to look at it.
Okay, thanks. Well, let's follow up on the worst landlords watch list that you just mentioned. The Public Advocate puts out this list. It makes news every year. It shames certain bad landlords. But then what happens? How does that list impact real change? So, Mr. Williams, we will start with you. It's been nearly 5 months since you put out the list. What action has been taken against these landlords? You have 1 minute.
We're very, very proud of the worst landlord list. We're actually proud also we passed more pieces of legislation than all the previous public advocates combined. One of those is to actually provide some more teeth to the worst landlord list. But we are really proud. We've seen something in the past year or two, which is people are using this as organizing tools. And so we've seen people in distress, tenants, use this to organize around their landlord. We have also seen for the first time landlord get arrested. And we see for the first time in a very long time, a landlord on our worst watch list is getting their building taken from them. Now, it's taking longer than we would like, but these are things that we haven't seen in previous years, so we're excited about the direction it's going. There is more teeth that we need, and we're going to try to use the legislative process as much as possible.
And those results, you believe, are the action of the results of the publishing of the list?
I'm into tools, and so I'm into using all the tools that we have. Without the worst landlord list, it might be harder for tenants to say, hey, this is a problem. They're actually on the worst landlord list. Let's organize around that. And I do believe the city's response to that list as well.
Thank you. Ms. Rajkumar, how would you give teeth to the worst landlords watch list?
Well, currently, the 100 worst landlords list does nothing. It's just spectacle. It's just for show. But the public evictor does very little for our tenants. And it's hard to do anything if you run a largely remote office. This is the public absentee, not the public advocate. We need someone in the role who keeps an open office, who is 24/7. When you call his office, you get a voicemail that says, thank you for calling, we'll call you back in 5 days. That is not acceptable, that is not public service, and that is not how you help tenants in our city.
Mr. Williams, this has come up on the campaign trail about remote office. You care to address what
there's so much there that's just fully false. I know it seems like she gets these things from either Twitter or Eric Adams, but they are just false.
It's in the news.
And so why you would attack unions for fighting for hybrid work, I really don't understand. Why you would attack city workers who may be looking right now who are happy to have that hybrid option. In our office, we have a hybrid option. It's in the union contract. DC 37 has asked for a hybrid option. And so that option is provided. This notion that there's an empty office actually makes no sense, is not true, and it's an insult to you, city worker, who is working really hard to make sure that the city continues, including about 60 folks in my office. Okay. Shout out to the constituency.
You can't rewrite history.
All right. Thank you. Sally?
Thank you, David. Mr. Williams, we want to discuss a recent incident that happened in your office. It was recently reported that a staffer in your office quietly resigned nearly a month ago. She says she was drugged and assaulted by 2 members of your security detail at a party in December. She also accused your chief of staff of fostering a toxic work environment. The chief of staff is on leave with pay, the security officers were reassigned, and an investigation was recently launched. The public advocate is supposed to speak up when there's alleged injustices in city government. Why didn't the public hear about this incident for more than 5 months? You have a minute to respond.
You know, to be clear, if someone is in pain, and I want to make sure we lift that up first and don't ignore that. And the best thing you can do when this happens is to act responsibly, act immediately, and take it very seriously. And we did all of those things. When we got that complaint about 3-4 weeks after the incident occurred, we immediately responded. We made sure that people were put on leave. We reached out to every agency you can think of, like NYPD, like DOI. We started our own investigations, and we start to this date no substantiation. But we opened another investigation, so there was a third party outside to make sure that it is not connected to us. You can't speak about HR matters as a matter of public law. And so it wasn't about trying to hide anything. It was really trying to make sure that we're following the process. We spoke to the legal department of the city as well. We did everything that you would want someone to do in a position like mine who has employees. We acted responsibly. We took it seriously. We acted immediately.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up on that. I understand the investigation is underway. Have you taken any steps to change anything in the culture in your office or to just ensure a safer environment while this investigation proceeds?
Oh, we take workplace environment very, very seriously. And I try not to get to the nitty-gritty because it's an open investigation, but I do want to clear something up. The first time we heard from the complainant about this staff member and workplace was at that actual complaint. Then nothing came from that person before. But we always take it seriously. And as a leader, we're always having conversations on how we can make the workplace better. We have had conversations on how we can speak in ways that are uplifting and not harmful. And we're going to make sure that we continue with that. But I want to be clear, this is something that we took serious, immediate action on. And there's actually not much more you could have done responsibly as someone in my position.
Excuse me, can I respond to that?
Yes, we can do a brief response.
So a woman was drugged and assaulted in your office, and you did nothing for 6 months. Still have done nothing. We all know that the NYPD investigative unit was in your office last week asking questions. You're being investigated by multiple agencies. The woman was outside of your office just today asking for justice.
Let's give Mr. Williams a brief
Mr. Williams, will you
response.
resign from this office?
I just want New Yorkers to understand that this is a licensed attorney who is speaking facts that have not been proven at all. And I want to be clear, when you ask the same licensed attorney about Eric Adams' resignation, she would say that she does not have the facts.
Excuse me.
And so
all right.
Can I respond to that?
We may have a chance to cover that, but we have other issues.
He has just said things that were very inappropriate right now.
I would just like to finish. I would love to.
And I would like to respond.
And we'd like to hear.
Assemblyman, can I just finish any one of my questions, please?
Can you please say the truth?
Go ahead.
Speak the
Final seconds here on this, Mr. Williams.
Okay, so I just laid out exactly what we did. There has been no substantiation until this point of any of the allegations. There is not one thing else that could have been done except act immediately, remove people, and open investigations, which we did. Some of the investigations were not ours.
Okay.
Theirs have actually taken some more.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Rajkumar,
by the way,
you have a few seconds here. Yes.
It's important to say that there's been no accusations about me.
Understood, but I believe that you have made those points.
Yeah.
Ms. Rajkumar, you have a few seconds here on this, and then we will move on.
Yes, I'm a licensed attorney, and that's why this concerns me so much, because you did nothing for this woman. You cannot protect the woman in your office, and you have a troubling anti-woman record. You have a history of domestic abuse. You have been anti-choice for most of your life.
I mean, next you said I'm eating the cats and I'm eating the dogs. This doesn't make any sense. I would really like to focus on what this office can do. I want to be clear, there's been no allegations against me. And as the leader in that office, we took immediate steps as a licensed attorney.
All right, thank you. We discussed that, so we are going to move on. Thank you. We are Ms. Rajkumar,
$40 million. If you're going to make up a number, just make up a number.
I know the
both
facts.
of you, no one is hearing you right now because you're talking over each other, all right? I believe that we've had a chance to ask a question, answer. We have other issues. I want to ask you about the city charter, which says the mayor cannot perform their duties. The public advocate takes over until a special election is held, when the mayor cannot perform their duties. So this became a very real part of the conversation early this year amid Mayor Adams' legal problems. So the question to both of you is, why should voters believe you're ready on day one to oversee a budget of more than $100 billion and a police force larger than the armies of many countries. We'll begin with you, Mr. Williams. You have 1 minute.
Well, my job, I've only run for public advocate. I haven't run for comptroller and changed to public advocate. I haven't run for mayor. I've run for public advocate to be the people's voice. And what that means is you have to be ready to be the mayor possibly for 90 days. We've actually sadly seen that possibly come into place. And what I know that people know about me is I'm transparent and I'm honest. Our job for those 90 days, had they come, would be simply to transition the city to the next mayor. So you have 90 days to make sure that people know that 911 will be answered, that 311 will be answered, that garbage will be picked up. I've been in electoral office in these kind of positions for 15 years now. It's hard to believe that I'm now one of the elder statesmen, but we have a lot of experience in making sure that government continues to work for New Yorkers with equity and justice. We were prepared to do that had the time come, and with your support in getting reelected, we'd be prepared to do it again. But I hope it doesn't, because that means something wrong happened in the city. And so I want to continue to be.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Rajkumar.
Thank you. First, I think it's very troubling that Jumaane Williams has made up his own facts throughout this whole debate. He has evicted tenants. He was anti-choice. And anyone can Google his name and you can see those facts online. I have prepared my whole life for this moment. And I am running for public advocate to love and empower all the people of this city. So if the circumstance comes that I have to step into the mayor's role, I will rise to that challenge like I've risen my entire life. My entire life, I've been the underdog. My parents came to this country with little. My mom was born in a mud hut in India, and I have persevered against all odds. So if the circumstance comes, I'm going to rise to the challenge, and it's going to be my love for New Yorkers that's going to take me all the way.
Okay, thank you.
I was name-checked in that once again.
30 seconds.
I just want to be clear that none of that is true. And what happens when you don't know how this office works or what to do with it, you come up with kind of Trumpian attacks that you get from Twitter or you get from Mayor Eric Adams, who I've tried my best to hold accountable.
Can I please address this?
None of that is true.
He's in the middle of his answer.
He's in a rebuttal. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
None of that is true. And I know the folks who have supported me know the work that we have done, know that you are in some concerning times, and as public advocate, a people's voice, you need someone who knows what this job is and will hold people accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Quick response, please.
Yes, these are very desperate attacks. Eric Adams has nothing to do with this debate. And when we're talking about Donald Trump, there's only one person here who can stand up to Trump.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move on.
Melissa.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Rajkumar. Staying with this same line of questioning, we have a couple more scenarios to explore further on how you might handle an event in the event that you step in as mayor and we're faced with a crisis. The first one involves immigrants. We know that the number of immigrants who are now crossing the Mexican border has dropped under President Donald Trump. But here's a hypothetical, and it may sound familiar. You're the mayor when 3,000 migrants land on your doorstep, shipped on buses by a Republican governor. How would you handle this situation, knowing now that there will be no federal reimbursement for the expenses laid out by the city? Would you house the immigrants? How, and if so, where? We're going to start with Ms. Rajkumar. You'll have 1 minute to answer.
So I've been a leader on the migrant crisis when our city was suffering with an influx of migrants like we've never seen in history. I stood up to the president and I said, New York City needs help. And I gathered a coalition of over 54 lawmakers to call upon the president to help New York City. That's the kind of public advocate that I will be. I will unite the city to get the help that we need at our time of crisis. To manage a migrant crisis, you need to have incredible organizational skills, and I have those in spades. As a civil rights lawyer, as someone who directed immigration affairs for the entire state of New York, I launched a first-in-the-nation immigrant defense program that other states have replicated. So I will be ready to step into that role and to manage the crisis.
Ms. Rajkumar, you may have advocated at the time that this happened under Mayor Eric Adams' tenure, but I should just note that Mr. Biden, the president at the time, did not come through with the aid that you were advocating for.
Well, actually, President Biden did do some things. For example, he allowed work authorization for some classes of immigrants, and I was happy to be a part of that push. And he also did take some actions at the border to control the border. So I really feel like my advocacy did do something.
There were a lot of people, I'll just note there were a lot of people advocating for that at the time. But Mr. Williams, you have 1 minute to answer. How would you handle the situation if those migrants ended up on your doorstep? How would you feel about laying out the money to house them? Would you house them, and how?
Well, first, I need to be clear about something. This is about Eric Adams. because Eric Adams is the mayor now, and people deserve to know how you'd be public advocate under mayor. If it was Bill de Blasio would be the person. So people should know as public advocate how you feel about this mayor's performance, who's been failing us on so many issues. As public advocate, I think we showed what we would do. One, unlike the mayor, I wouldn't dare people to send us here. He first said, bring us here, we'll show you how to do it. That was the wrong move. Second, we were in a tight situation where you're actually being asked to solve a national problem without the resources. That should have been called out, which it was. We went to D.C. twice to speak to people in the administration. The bigger part is how you manage that crisis. And unfortunately, this mayor chose a divisive tact. And when people are nervous and scared and there's a scarcity mindset, the last thing you want to do is have people divided. And so what I think would have been better to have a conversation about what we all need, ask for the resources that we have, including Kathy Hochul, not providing the state resources that we need.
Just to know, you're out of time, but we didn't hear an answer as to how you would handle that situation.
Oh, no, I think that was the answer. The biggest issue was the divisiveness that happened here. We were in a bad situation.
You didn't say whether you would house the migrants in the future.
Well, the thing is, we didn't have a choice. That's the problem.
Okay.
The choice was not given to us. They were just sent here. And so the problem would have been to try to
move on.
Sally.
Sally?
Thank you, Melissa. Here's another scenario. You temporarily become mayor in the months before the NYPD needs to fill a new class of recruits for the police academy. We all know finding recruits has been a struggle for the police department. How would you convince people to join New York's finest? You have 1 minute to answer. Mr. Williams, we'll start with you.
You know, we're going through this right now. I believe one of the things that we can do to support our law enforcement is stop asking them to do everything, and then stop trying to give them forced overtime to do the things that other agencies could be doing. When I talk to law enforcement, when I talk to police officers who are leaving the force, the biggest thing they talk about is actually overtime. Whether they're worried that if it's taken away, their paycheck will be different, or the forced overtime that's being asked of them and they can't see their families. And so what I want to do is present another reality where officers are doing the job that they were hired to do, which is law enforcement, best used for acute issues and situations. But I want to tell them they wouldn't be used to try to solve the mental health crisis. They wouldn't be used to try to solve the homelessness crisis. I think if we can reshape public safety as a shared responsibility and then support our law enforcement to do the job they were hired to do, we would see a much different response in morale and actually people applying.
Thank you. Ms. Rajkumar, same question for you. How would you entice people to join the NYPD?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Jumaane didn't do anything during the migrant crisis, which was very upsetting.
Please,
but
this is a question about the NYPD.
Yes, and to your question about the NYPD, he has called to defund the police for years, and that is not helpful. So we don't have people joining the NYPD because our elected officials are disrespectful of law enforcement. I'm very proud to be endorsed by the PBA and by so many in law enforcement in this race. And one thing that I'm going to do is focus on the 9,000 people that commit most of their crimes in this city. If we focus on this population of 9,000 with targeted interventions, we can cut crime by more than 50%.
The question, though, is how would you recruit people at a time when it's hard for the NYPD to recruit?
So what I'm going to do is be somebody that, first of all, is concerned about public safety, unlike the current public advocate who has been a defund advocate. Also, I'll explore the idea of pay increases for people to attract them into the NYPD and let them know that their elected officials have their back.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, since you were invoked, a brief response to your record on the defund movement.
Yeah. Again, I know what this office does, and so I'm happy to say what we did as public advocate. If you're going to run for office, you should know. We went to D.C. twice to speak to Tom Perez and other leaders in the administration. We put out reports and we tried our best to pass legislation and help guide the conversation. I'm very proud of that work. So much so that people in other cities are now trying to open public advocates office based on the work that we did.
Okay.
I just want to make clear, I've never used the words defund the police. It's just something that hasn't happened.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you. Another issue that's on both of your agendas, we want to talk about e-bikes and delivery workers. For pedestrians, e-bikes can be a dangerous menace. For many delivery workers, it is how they earn a living. Mr. Rajkumar, you've been leading the fight in the State Assembly to regulate e-bikes. Mr. Williams, you've promoted e-bike safety, but you've opposed licensing requirements. So two different views on this. Let's get into it. We'll begin with you, Ms. Rajkumar. Why is your approach better than that of Mr. Williams?
Of course.
You have 30 seconds.
Of course. He was willing to hold up the city budget if it didn't defund the police. But yes, I have been leading the charge to regulate e-bikes, making sure that e-bikes have license plates, registration, and insurance. We need to do that so that there can be proper enforcement. Right now, New Yorkers are getting hit on the streets right and left. It has become an epidemic, and I'm proud to be leading that charge in Albany to make sure that the DMV regulates this booming industry and we can all be safe on the street.
Mr. Williams?
Can I just rebut first because my name was checked in
You have
there?
limited time here, Mr.
Well,
Williams.
I would like people to look at the record, and the record is actually, that's not true. What we said is if there's going to be a hiring freeze, you can't just hire police officers.
All right.
You either hire everybody or you don't.
Relative to e-bike.
Yes. Now, just to be, we look at everything responsibly. So we did research. We looked at other cities that had licensing. Many of those cities are now repealing the licensing because of the things that have happened. And so we always want to be responsible when we're looking at this. There are some dangers with e-bikes, definitely with scooters, many of them that should have licenses and don't. But what we don't want to do is overreach. So we want to make sure that we're providing the safety that's needed while protecting the people who are walking, who are driving, and who are riding those bikes. So we've put forth some safety measures, but we want to make sure we don't do things that cities have done and are now repealing. And when my mother's walking down the street, I want to make sure she's not hit by a bike.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Melissa.
you. Subways and buses are the arteries of the city, and I have two quick questions. We're really looking for brief yes or no answers here about where you draw the line or see possibilities. First, the MTA operates with a massive debt, as you both know. Fare evasion alone costs the system, $800 million per year. Do you think people who jump turnstiles in the subway should be arrested and prosecuted? Yes or no? Mr. Williams?
Well, Cuomo's MTA, just one, and two, the problem is we sometimes spend almost as much money trying to stop the fare evasion.
Okay,
I do think there should be levels of enforcement for fare evasion, but the overhandedness, particularly for folks who may not be able to afford the fare, could be a problem.
Thank you, Ms. Rajkumar. Please, a yes or no question.
No, and I believe the MTA stands for money thrown away. So as public advocate, I'm going to look into the MTA budget and make sure they spend responsibly.
I'm moving on to another question. One proposal that's been floated in the mayoral campaign is making MTA buses free. Yes or no, please? Is this something you support, Ms. Rajkumar?
Yes, I think that's a worthy cause.
Mr. Williams?
Hell yeah, we should have done that a long time ago.
Okay, thank you. The public advocate may not be granted much actual authority by the city charter, but it can be, as you know, a powerful bully pulpit. So the views of the public advocate on hot-button issues are sometimes amplified by national media, and certainly comments on social media can go viral. This week, immigration sweeps by federal agents in Los Angeles triggered protests that President Trump used as a reason to deploy the National Guard and Marines. We have seen related protests here in New York City amid fears the LA scenario could happen here. If it did, how would you use the bully pulpit of the public advocate's office? You have 1 minute to answer. We'll begin with you, Mr. Williams.
I just want to speak to New Yorkers really quickly who are afraid about what's happening in the White House, and then see a mayor like Mayor Eric Adams leading a city of immigrants by doing nothing, who's either beholden to this president or believes in the MAGA-type responses. There are elected officials doing our best to stand in that gap, along with advocates and activists, and we'll continue to do so. You know, I've been in a situation where the city's been protesting since I got elected, and I've shown that we can be in the streets protesting, we'll be in City Hall, and we'll be in the courtroom if necessary. I think it's important to point out before you get to the response what is happening. People are being kidnapped on our streets by people with masks. And so we have to call that out and say that we're going to do whatever we can to protect folks. And the second is to make sure that people are able to lift their voices nonviolently and can make sure that they're letting people know that they're there to protect them. I'm a believer in Kingian nonviolence, and that does mean sometimes civil disobedience. And you want to make sure people can get what they need out, but you want to make sure that the city is not turned upside down.
Thank you. Ms. Rajkumar?
The federal government is causing chaos. We're seeing that in LA right now. The federal government is sending National Guard troops into the city. What I have to say is that this is New York City, and we get to decide what happens here. And as public advocate, I'm going to stand up to the Trump administration and say that you don't get to dictate what happens here. And that also applies to Medicaid. I'm very concerned because over half of New Yorkers are on Medicaid. And in the bill that Trump is promoting, he's going to strip Medicaid coverage from millions of New Yorkers. So I plan to use the full legal powers of the public advocate's office to sue the Trump administration. And that is something that he has not done. As the public absentee, he has not used the legal powers of this office. I will go in and give it real legal muscle.
Sometimes standing up doesn't mean anything if you're not present. If you are with the mayor 151 times out of 139 days, you're present with the mayor more than days, and that's what our Assemblymember has done.
All right.
But I will say we have used the legal.
We have to move on.
We have used the legal powers.
We have a lot of other issues to get to. Sal,
Can I please get started? Thank you, David. I'm going to move on to the next question, please. Let's stick with this idea of the public advocate wielding the power of the bully pulpit. Albany recently cracked down on people wearing masks while committing crimes. This movement from lawmakers started as a reaction to pro-Palestinian demonstrations on college campuses like Columbia University in New York. Do you agree that there should be restrictions on wearing masks while protesting? We're looking for quick answers here. Ms. Rajkumar.
Yes, there's always been a mask ban. We just removed it during COVID. It's time to reinstate that because people feel unsafe.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
We have used the legal powers of the office. Right now, we have amicus brief in court supporting ICE off Rikers as well as other things and restoring services to the city. That's just not true. I think they kind of landed in a decent place, which is if it's in the commission of a crime, there's an additional penalty. What we've seen when these things have happened, the black and brown communities have been hit the worst.
Okay, thank you. Last month, Mayor Adams announced a mayor's office to combat anti-Semitism, citing the, quote, unprecedented rise in anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish hate. What's the public advocate's role in combating anti-Semitism? You'll have 1 minute to answer this, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Williams.
It's very important to understand what people are going through and people who are watching. People who readily identify as people of Jewish faith and yarmulkes, Stars of David, are scared to walk around. That is something that should be unacceptable in New York City. And so I will continue to do what I have been doing, which is stand up against anti-Semitism, which is stand up against hatred to begin with, and speaking with communities to help empower them as well to be upstanders and not just bystanders. Because what we've learned is that you want to make sure you report all of the hate crimes. You want to call them out as anti-Semitism or whatever form of hate. But the police themselves can't just solve this. And we've seen that. And so we want to empower communities like we're doing with community groups to help people be upstanders against this type of hate and this anti-Semitism that our Jewish brothers and sisters are facing right now.
Thank you. Ms. Rajkumar, again, the question is, what's the public advocate's role in combating anti-Semitism?
The public advocate must be the leader in ending anti-Semitism in the greatest city in the world. And that's what I will do as public advocate. I believe that we can stamp out anti-Semitism. And I was so proud to be recognized by the Jerusalem Post for my work standing up against anti-Semitism all across the city. We need to make sure that on college campuses, Jewish kids feel safe. And I'm very disappointed in our current public advocate because he has not made Jewish communities feel safe, and he has had ambiguity on this issue. You have to be morally clear. You have to be able to call out anti-Semitism. You can't hide. And I'm proud to say that Jewish communities and leaders across the city are supporting our campaign because we can do better.
A brief response, Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I'm also proud of the Jewish support that we received. I never like to use I have a black friend defense. I like to talk about the work that I'm doing. And I have been crystal clear for as long as I've been elected official, pushing back on anti-Semitism, pushing back on hate, standing with any community that is facing this kind of bias.
All right, thank you. We have a related question. Historically, the public advocate has been in the mix of protests in the city for a wide range of issues. Since October 7, 2023, protests have focused largely on Israel and Gaza. Some in New York who feel Israel's military response in Gaza went too far have concerns that there's a fine line between expressing political views and being labeled as anti-Semitic. What would you do as public advocate to preserve their right to peacefully protest? You'll each have 1 minute. We'll begin with you, Ms. Rajkumar.
The First Amendment is so important to our country. I will do everything I can to preserve people's right to be heard, to express whatever views they want to express. That's democracy, and I will always stand up for it. At the same time, we need to watch for hate when speech borders on hate, and we need to teach our kids and encourage them to think about how they're going to make peace in the world. I was a CUNY professor, and I always encourage debate so the children could go and make peace in the world, because we're counting on them right now to solve their problems in the Middle East. As public advocate, I'm going to focus on bringing communities together. I have a very close relationship with the Muslim American community all across the city. Every year, I launch my 5-borough Ramadan Iftar tour, and I look forward to bringing all communities together so we can bring peace.
Mr. Williams?
This is where responsible language is really important because people are in pain. I know, quite frankly, as public advocate, that I can't solve the Middle East crisis that hasn't been solved in decades. What I can do is speak to the people who live in this city, who are in pain and concerned, from synagogues to mosques to churches. And so what I did after October 7th is joined my fellow elected officials to condemn what happened, to immediately say we have to bring the hostages home, to empathize with people who do not know where their families are. What I did after is something that some of my opponents still can't do to this day. I lifted up what's happening in Gaza, the collective punishment of an entire people in a country that would not be accepted anywhere else. And if you cannot to this day call for a ceasefire, if you cannot lift up what's happening, the pain of all the people of this city, this may not be the job for you because it's a delicate situation and people are in pain rightfully. So what I decided to do is say, we're going to lift up the pain of everyone. And that's, I believe, the right course.
Can I respond to that, please?
Well, because you said your opponents haven't done so. Briefly, Ms. Rajkumar?
Yes, to say that I don't care about families in pain and kids dying
Well, I didn't say that at all.
Simply outrageous.
I said you wouldn't call for a ceasefire even
That really
tonight.
makes no sense. If you cared, you would do more instead of sleeping until noon and running a remote office.
I imagine you wouldn't call for ceasefire today.
And let's give Mr. Williams a chance to briefly respond.
Excuse me, I have called for a humanitarian pause.
Okay. Mr. Williams, and then we move
As
on.
I mentioned, I didn't say that Senator didn't care. I believe she might actually, but politics sometimes get in the way when you care. So not being able to condemn October 7th and call for a ceasefire even tonight is a problem because people are in pain. This notion that I wake up at noon is absurd.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Okay, candidates, for decades, New York has not had a functioning mental health system. Most people agree that we need a better one. A recent poll, in fact, by the 5-Borough Institute found that more than 8 out of 10 New Yorkers believe our city is in a mental health crisis right now. So we have questions for both of you about the role that you could play as public advocate. Ms. Rajkumar, on the campaign trail, you've been referring to a bill that you've proposed in Albany that you call the Empire State of Mind Act. It would establish a right to community-based care. But that bill has not passed in Albany. So if you haven't been able to get this done in the state legislature where you work, how would you make these changes as the city's public advocate? You'll have 1 minute.
I get a lot done in Albany. I'm a one-woman powerhouse that's driven forward impossible legislation to shut down illegal smoke shops, to give human rights to 300,000 domestic workers.
This question's about mental health, though, with all due respect.
And immigrant women.
To your record.
And to your question of Empire State of Mind Act, I wrote the most comprehensive mental health bill in 60 years. And I'm going to get it done. It may not be this session, but it might be as public advocate. So I think what's important to realize is the vision that I've put forward.
Are you saying you would introduce a local bill in the New York City Council to create a right to mental health care?
Exactly. Not only will I introduce a local bill, but I'll also help Albany lawmakers pass the bill that I wrote.
Okay.
As public advocate, I'm going to be involved with city, state, and federal levels.
All right. Mr. Williams, you've been in this position for almost 6 years now. What role, if any, does the public advocate have in mental health policy? You have a minute.
Yeah, I actually understand what the laws are, what this office can do and can't do. The bill that's been described, we can't do on the local level. We'd have to do on the state level. So I'd kind of work with my state partners, maybe the Assemblyman, to get that done. What we have done is lift up the voices of people who have not had continuum of care. We've put out several reports on what this city has been doing around mental health. I am happy to say that in between our first and second report, there has been movement, and I believe our report helped that. But it's definitely not where it needs to be. And unfortunately, a mayor that I believed was closer aligned with how to address this has done nothing about it except focus on involuntary hospitalization, which is something that we already do and have a tool for. So as public advocate, we're going to continue to do our charter mandated duty. We're going to review what's going on. We're going to push for a continuum of care and work with the city council to make sure that we have the resources to provide that continuum of care and make sure that people who are out there without that care get the assistance they need, and so that people feel safe like my daughter who's on the train every single day.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Rajkumar, during your previous debate with Mr. Williams, you said that you disagree with Mayor Eric Adams, specifically on the subject of mental health, but you did not elaborate. So we'd like to give you 30 seconds here to be more specific about where you and Mayor Adams part ways on this subject.
Well, first of all, it's not enough to just protest against involuntary commitment. You have to do more to solve the mental health crisis. We need a public advocate that does more. To your question of Mayor Adams, I don't believe that just involuntary commitment itself is enough to solve the mental health crisis. We need to have a comprehensive approach. We need to intervene when people who are seriously mentally ill interact with the hospital. We need to intervene. They should not leave the hospital without a treatment plan. When people go to the correctional facility, they should be screened for mental health care. We need a comprehensive
just
approach.
Really quick, yes or no follow-up. Did you vote for the measure that just passed in Albany that made it easier for hospitals to hold people against their will?
I voted for the state budget where that was in that. Yes,
okay.
That was part
Thank you
of that.
very much.
I was name-checked at the beginning, so I just want to say to the people of the city of New York, I believe in a public advocate who understands why you want to protest right now. I believe in a public advocate who understands that protest is important to move that into action, into policy, which is the public advocate that I've been.
All right, Mr. Williams. We're going to stay with mental health, though, for a moment. We alluded to this a little bit earlier, but one criticism of the city's effort is people with mental illness are cycling in and out of Rikers. By law, it is set to close by 2027, though many widely believe that it will be an additional years before it actually happens. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo says if he's elected mayor, he will move out all severely mentally ill people within 30 days. Two-part question. Do you think that's a viable plan? And how would you advocate for mentally ill people in Rikers? You have 1 minute to answer this. We'll begin with you, Ms. Rajkumar.
If there's a will, there's a way. And I believe that it will be a worthy cause to move people who need the treatment out of Rikers to a place where they can receive that kind of treatment. I do believe that Rikers is a travesty. It is a humanitarian crisis. Rikers was named itself after a slave catcher, and there have been generations that have suffered in this facility. But I don't believe that closed Rikers is the magic trick that everyone thinks it's going to be. To really solve criminal justice and public safety issues in this city, we need to invest in mental health care. We need to break the school-to-prison pipeline. We need to focus on the 9,000 people that commit most of the crimes with targeted intervention, including mental health care.
Let me ask you, Ms. Rajkumar, you're saying you don't think closing Rikers is the answer, but then what would you do for those who are said to be in crisis, according to many different entities, including federal judges who are concerned?
I think we need to focus on speeding up the justice system. Justice delayed is justice denied. We can't have people languishing behind bars while they wait for justice, because that is injustice.
Mr. Williams, okay, thank you, Ms. Wright. Mr. Williams, do you think the former governor's plan of moving severely mentally ill people out within 30 days is viable? And then what would you do for mental?
First, I just want to say, saying that you will start off public advocate journey by not following the law, I don't think is the way to go. Closing Rikers Island is actually the law. We should try our best to follow it. The problem with Andrew Cuomo is that he says whatever he needs to say to get elected, and so he's been on all sides of every issue depending on what's politically convenient for him. What I do know is that all of us agree on a few things. One is that Rikers Island should not be the largest mental health institution in North America, and it is. We also agree that everybody thinks people's cases are moving too slowly. Those are two things that I'm hoping that everybody on all sides will get around to, but when you have the mayor pushing things like involuntary hospitalization, it's hard for folks to focus on figuring out how we can get that person the mental health assistance that they need. The continuum of care is a problem. You can hold people against their will at a hospital for 3 days or 3 months. If they come out without that continuum of care, they're going to have a problem and maybe end up at Rikers Island. And so what we need to do is pull back on the things that we know haven't been working and use our resources to do the things that we all agree on.
All right, thank you. Sally?
Thank you, David. Let's turn to the work of the Public Advocate's Office and one effort that's drawn quite a bit of attention over the last few years. Mr. Williams, you co-sponsored the How Many Stops Act, which requires NYPD officers to document more low-level interactions with the public. As you know, Mayor Adams vetoed the bill and the City Council overrode him, and it became law last summer. The point of the law is greater transparency, but police say it drains time and resources. I'm wondering how you think it's going so far, and specifically, what does the data you're looking at show? You have 1 minute to answer.
You know, it was interesting. I want to make clear that the mayor supported this bill when he was running. I'm not sure what happened in between then and when he became mayor. We also have had at least 2 reports around the How Many Stops Act, because as much as the misinformation and lies about the bill, it was simply a reporting bill, and we offered the administration to do it as easily as possible. So we've had 2 reports, and you know what's happened? The mayor and the commissioner are celebrating a drop in homicide. They're celebrating a drop in shootings. So what we said was correct. This was never about changing the way that police officers can do their job. From the data we've seen, unfortunately, things that we might have seen, which is sometimes an overuse of stops in Black and brown communities. What we've seen is what actually the judge pointed out, who actually recommended this bill, is there had been mislabeling when it comes to which stop was what. But again, this is just a reporting bill. It's not a panacea. What we need to do is talk about how, when, and why we use law enforcement, and then we start moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Ms. Rajkumar, do you think the How Many Stops Act has been effective? And if not, what would you do to help improve it? You have 1 minute.
No, I don't think it's effective. I think it's drowned the NYPD in paperwork, and I think it's making New Yorkers less safe. And I think what we've heard a lot of is him criticizing Mayor Eric Adams.
Public advocate.
But it's not enough to sleep until noon and then write a press release criticizing Mayor Adams. To be an effective public advocate, you need to put forth solutions that are actually going to help New Yorkers.
The question here, though, is how would you improve the How Many Stops Act?
Real lives are at stake.
How would you improve the How Many Stops Act?
So when it comes to How Many Stops Act, as I've said, I oppose it. I think it's drowned the NYPD in paperwork, and that's just not effective. That's not useful.
But it is the law, so how would do you have any suggestions very quickly for how to
Yes, I think that we can we can limit the scope of it more. So it's just if a police officer just has a regular interaction with somebody that's obviously very harmless, that should not be included. We should increase the number of exemptions so that we free up the hands of the NYPD a little bit more so that they can do their job.
Okay, thank you.
I was name checked again. I would say that the How Many Stops Act does not include just regular interactions. It's important to say that and know what it is that you're talking about so you don't provide misinformation. This notion that I wake up at noon, again, is another Eric Adams attack that I guess is being talked about. One, I have a toddler, so you can't wake up at noon. 2, my public record is there. I wish we can just focus on what this job actually can do.
Thank you, Ms.
Okay, so we're about to do that. The Public Advocate's Office has its critics, as you know. Some say it should be abolished, calling its budget of more than $5 million a year a waste of taxpayer money, especially with no real power to make change. So in 1 sentence each, please, sum up what your message is to those critics about why we need a Public Advocate's Office. Ms. Rajkumar, 1 sentence.
I'm going to turn the Public Advocate's Office into a powerhouse for New Yorkers. And that's not what it is right now.
Mr. Williams, 1 sentence, please.
The public advocate is the people's voice. It's a watchdog for you, and it cannot be an ally or a foe to the mayor. It is to do what is right for the people of the city of New York.
A related question, again, 1 sentence, please. Who holds the Public Advocate's Office accountable? Mr. Williams.
Well, that would be the voters. Like most elected officials, the voters definitely hold the Public Advocate's Office accountable. And again, there are 5 charter-mandated duties that I'd love to talk about.
Yes.
We've exercised all of them.
We know.
And we're very proud of the work
Ms.
that we continue to do.
Sorry, Ms. Rajkumar.
As Public Advocate, you are the people's voice and the people's champion, the people's organizer, so the people hold you accountable.
Thank you. As early voting begins, the talk of the town right now is ranked choice voting in the race for mayor. So we would like to know, in what order do each of you plan to rank the candidates for mayor on your ballots? You each have 30 seconds if you need that long to tell us. Ms. Rajkumar, will begin with you.
I have not yet decided how I'm ranking my picks for mayor. I am going to be an independent watchdog as the public advocate.
Okay.
And I will make those decisions.
Since you're not answering, I'm going to jump in and try to follow up. Recent polls suggest that this race for mayor has been tightening between Mr. Cuomo and Mr. Zohran Mamdani. Is Mr. Cuomo likely to end up on your ballot? Will he be one of your 5 choices?
Look, as public advocate, I'm an independent watchdog. So whoever the mayor is,
will Mr. Mamdani, I'll try one more time. Will Mr. Mamdani be one of the people you rank on your ballot?
I don't think it would be appropriate for me, especially as someone who's going to be the independent watchdog, to opine on this particular question.
Okay. Mr. Williams, same question to you. We know you've spoken some about who you're supporting, but can you tell us on your mayoral ballot which 5 will you rank, and specifically in what order?
I think it's important to do this because ranked choice voting is confusing, and it's important to let people know how to actually do this. By the way, I regrettably had Eric Adams on my rank sheet a few years ago, and I've certainly held him accountable.
So voters want to know what you're going to do.
We have made endorsements. We've said that we're doing a co-endorsement for number 1, Brad Lander and Adrian Adams.
But you can only put one person on your number 1.
Yes, so we're asking folks to co-rank Adrian Adams and Brad Lander for number 1, and then choose one of them for number 2.
But if people put 2 people on the
you
first
should not
line,
do 2 people.
then that, right, so that's
literally we're
confusing
saying
to people.
we believe both of these folks are really good. We're asking
But
you to choose
who are
one
you
of those.
putting first on your ballot?
We are saying to choose one of these folks for number 1, one of these for number 2,
Okay.
Zoran Mamdani for number 3, Zelno Mari for number 4, Scott Stringer for number 5. The most important thing is not to rank Andrew Cuomo.
Ms. Rajkumar, you're said to have a close alliance with Mayor Eric Adams, and you've appeared at public events with him more than 100 times. He's not running as a Democrat. Are you considering voting for him in November on his third-party line? A quick answer, please, yes or no?
As I have said, I have not made my choices for mayor, but I am glad that you pointed out I have been everywhere in the city because I care so much about what I do.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, you've been a sharp critic of Mayor Adams. Any chance you'll vote for him in November on his third-party line?
You know the answer to that. I was on the Dream Team for a while. Don't rank Eric and Andrew for mayor, and nothing has changed.
Okay, so does that mean if Andrew Cuomo wins the Democratic primary, you won't be supporting him?
That's a tough call. I want to see where that bridge goes. Hopefully we do the right thing and make sure he doesn't win the primary.
Thank you.
Thank you. We want to ask you this question, if we could answer it in just a few seconds. Your priorities as public advocate, what's the first agency you target to force change and why? Looking for a quick answer here. First, Ms. Rajkumar.
Okay, the Department of Education has the largest budget of any agency, but 1 in 3 kids doesn't actually attend school regularly, and over 60% of Black and Latino kids cannot read in this city. I'm going to fix those numbers by being someone that creates a whole new unit that's going to interface with families so that I can intervene and solve these problems.
Mr. Williams?
When you say target, I'm not sure what you mean, but there are a number of agencies that have issues, including DOE. HPD and DOB have a hiring process. There's a freeze there, so people can't get the services that they need. The Department of Social Services is the same thing. Obviously, the NYPD to make sure they're doing the job that they were hired to do with transparency.
Would any of those be a top priority, like first?
I think it's hard to say top because people don't have housing and affordability right now, and they're going to these agencies to apply for things where there's not enough people. And so we work very closely with the city council to make sure the budget is reflective of what's needed in the city.
All right, thank you. We have a couple of quick lightning round questions as we near the end of the debate. First, do you support congestion pricing? This is Rajkumar.
Yes, it's the law of the land right now, so yes.
Mr. Williams.
At least you follow one law, but yes, we need some tweaks to it, but yes.
Okay. Should NYPD funding increase, decrease, or stay the same? Mr. Williams.
I think every agency should get the funding that they need. Right now, there's almost 2,000 vacancies that we need to hire up.
Ms. Rajkumar.
I think we need to increase the NYPD budget because public safety is top of mind for New Yorkers.
All right, thank you. Do you believe New York is getting safer, yes or no? Ms. Rajkumar.
I believe yes, but we need to do more.
Mr. Williams?
Well, you can be safe and not feel safe, so definitely people don't feel safer. It actually
Do you believe yes or no?
It actually depends on the category.
All right, thank you. That's all the time we have. We certainly thank the candidates for a spirited and informative debate. Also, thank you to the New York City Campaign Finance Board. Check out their website, nycvotes.org. It has information on the candidates in every race. From NBC New York, Telemundo 47, and Politico, thank you for watching. Go vote June 24th. Have a good one.